Welcome to today's webinar, Moving from Provisional to Full CFLE Certification, What You Need to Know But May Be Afraid to Ask. I'm Scott Tobias, Associate Professor of Human Development and Family Studies at Kent State University. I'm joined by Amy Kelly, Graduate Student in Human Development and Family Studies at Kent State. All of the information included in today's webinar can be found through the National Council on Family Relations website, located at www.ncfr.org. Today's webinar will take you through the process of applying for your CFLE, your Certified Family Life Educator credential. The webinar will cover the topics of applying for the provisional certification, going from provisional to full certification, maintaining your CFLE credential, also known as recertification, recertification of your credential after a lapse, and finally, what is it that Certified Family Life Educators do?
Hi everyone, my name is Amy Kelly and I am going to talk to you guys today about applying for your provisional CFLE credential. So the first things that we're going to talk about are what is the provisional certification, and then we're also going to talk about who qualifies for the provisional certification. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what is the provisional certification. The provisional CFLE credential is for professionals who can demonstrate that they have a solid knowledge in each of the 10 family life education content areas. Just as a little reminder, each of those content areas are as following. The first one is families and individuals in societal context. The second one is internal dynamics of families. The third one is human growth and development across the lifespan. The fourth one is human sexuality. The fifth one is interpersonal relationships. The sixth one is family resource management. The seventh one is parent education and guidance. The eighth one is family law and public policy. The ninth one is professional ethics and practice. And the 10th content area is family life education methodology. Typically, new professionals, or at least those new to the world of family life education, haven't earned enough working hours to apply for full certification. So the provisional credential allows them to still get this credential while they're still accruing those work hours, while they're still gaining that experience. So I know a lot of you are probably wondering, how does someone go about receiving the provisional CFLE credential? As you can see here, there are two paths that someone can take to become provisionally certified. The first one is through a CFLE approved academic program. These are programs that have worked closely with NCFR to ensure that the courses they require students to complete are mirroring those 10 content areas we just talked about. This ensures that graduates of these programs have a knowledge in each of these different areas. So new graduates are able to apply as soon as they graduate. So as soon as they're done taking courses, they're able to submit their application paperwork to NCFR. But an application must be submitted within 2 years of graduating in order to take advantage of this option. When a graduate of an accredited program is applying for their provisional credential, there are a few documents that they'll need to submit to NCFR. The first one is a signed CFLE Code of Ethics. The second one is the CFLE approved abbreviated program application form. The third one is the program-specific checklist. And then finally, they'll need to submit a copy of their official transcripts from their program. Those first three documents, the Code of Ethics, the application form, and the checklist, are all available on the NCFR webpage. When submitting your application, you'll also be required to pay an application fee. There's an application fee for whether you're a member of NCFR or whether you aren't a member of NCFR. So be sure to check the NCFR webpage for the most up-to-date information on their fees. The second path to receiving your provisional certification is through taking the CFLE exam. The exam option is open to anyone who holds a bachelor's degree from an accredited non-CFLE approved program. This is a really great option for professionals who are interested in family life education, but maybe their undergrad was in a slightly different field. Just like with the first option, there are a few forms that you need to complete prior to taking the exam. The first one is the exam application form. You'll also need to submit your official transcripts. And then the third form that needs filled out is the signed CFLE Code of Ethics. And again, the exam application form and the CFLE Code of Ethics are available on the NCFR website. All of these documents will need to be submitted prior to actually taking the exam, and you'll have to include your application fee with that as well. Again, there's a fee for whether you're a member or whether you aren't a member of NCFR, so be sure to check their webpage for that information. For those of you who are thinking about taking the exam option, you may be wondering, okay, so this sounds like a really great option for me, but what exactly does this exam look like? So the exam is 150 questions testing your knowledge on the 10 CFLE content areas. Just like with the accredited program path, how it requires applicants to be knowledgeable in those 10 content areas, the exam does that as well. So all 150 questions revolve around those competencies. The exam is scored on a scale of 0 to 1,000, and you need a score of at least 700 to pass the exam. If you don't receive a 700 on the exam, NCFR will send you diagnostic feedback on your performance. This will show you the areas that you may have struggled with, so that way you're able to study more focused on those areas if you decide to take the exam again in the future. Speaking of studying, NCFR does provide an exam study guide and study materials that you can use while you're prepping for the exam. These materials are really helpful in gaining an in-depth understanding of what family life education is, those 10 different content areas, and how you can be successful while taking the exam. On the NCFR website, there is a list of locations that applicants can take the exam at. Or if you plan on going to the NCFR conference, you could also take the exam there. Regardless of what path you take, whether you decide to go through the accredited program path or through taking the exam, the provisional certification is valid for up to 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, or when you've reached a point where you've gained enough work hours, you'll be able to apply for your full CFLE certification.
Once you've secured your provisional CFLE, first and foremost, congratulations. But it's never too early to start thinking about upgrading from provisional to full. To that end, provisional certification is valid for up to 5 years. Now, to receive your full certification, there are a couple of different paths we can take. There are 3 different ways to do this. The first is for applicants applying for full certification through the exam application process. The second is the abbreviated application form for those who are applying through full certification through the abbreviated application process. And then finally, for those who have been provisionally certified and are simply looking to upgrade, the upgrade application is available once sufficient work experience has been obtained. As a quick note, you'll probably want to submit these applications for upgrade as close to your anniversary month as possible for those who are provisionally certified. That date appears on your CFLE certificate or can be obtained through the NCFR website if you are also a member of NCFR. If you are provisionally certified, before you can upgrade to full, you need to accrue some work time in the field. That's the purpose of the provisional certification, is to give you that time. Remember, you have up to 5 years. Now, the work that you undertake should, first and foremost, demonstrate a preventative focus, which is one of the main concepts behind family life education. Next, it needs to relate to at least one of the 10 content areas for family life education. You need to be considering the family as a unit, even if you're working with individuals at the time. You also need to utilize a lifespan perspective in your work. And finally, you need to include identified content or curriculum that you can document for the upgrade later on. One of the things you might be wondering is, how do we document the work that we do for our upgrade? Well, again, this has to be within that 5-year time span. And it really can be any work setting so long as the methods used are preventative in nature and that they're focused on the family. Now, there are specific requirements for individuals depending on the type of degree that you hold. So for those holding a bachelor's degree, if you come from a degree that is in a family field, you're going to need approximately 3,200 hours of work experience. That may sound like a lot, but once you're in the field, these hours tend to accrue relatively quickly, and by the end of 5 years, you should be just fine. For those in a non-family field, that's going to require 4,800 hours of experience. Again, this sounds like a lot, but for those who are in the field, these hours do accrue rather quickly. If you hold a graduate degree, either a master's or a PhD, there are still hour requirements for those degrees for your upgrade. For those holding a master's or a PhD from a family field, meaning your degree is a family background, you're required to submit 1,600 hours of work experience. For those without a family background in their degree, they're required to submit 4,800 hours of work experience. We'll touch on what kinds of activities count towards these hours in just a moment. In order to upgrade to your full FLE status, you will need to submit a few forms. In a moment, I'll touch on what some of those work experiences could be, but before I do, let's walk through what forms are needed. First, the FLE Work Experience Summary Form. Second, a current resume or CV. 3, examples representative of the FLE work experience. Now, these are what are going to accompany that work experience summary form. For practitioners, this may include things such as program guides or flyers for events that they've held. It may also include curriculum that have been created, or perhaps workshops, roundtables, or other presentations at conferences. For academics, we have a very similar set: syllabi, research that's been conducted and published, outreach efforts, or any other kind of activity that, again, has an FLE prevention focus and is working with families, or in this case, students as well. In addition, you'll also need to have the FLE Employer Work Experience Assessment and Verification Form. You'll need a signed copy of the CFLE Code of Ethics, the same that you signed when you applied for your provisional certification. And last but not least, the application fee. Again, for the most up-to-date information on things like the application fee, please visit ncfr.org.
The next thing that we're going to talk about is how to maintain your CFLE credential, aka recertification. CFLEs with full certification must submit evidence of continuing education activity every 5 years. Every 5 years, when you submit that, you'll need 100 hours of continuing education. These continuing education activities can include things such as completed academic courses, so any academic courses that you have taken in that time. Attending conferences also counts towards these activities. If you attend the annual National Council on Family Relations conference, then you can actually claim 50 hours of continuing education. Seminars also count, so any seminars that you attend. And then any workshops or trainings that you attend also count towards these hours. Finally, you can also include new work experiences that weren't a part of your initial CFLE application. So any sort of prevention-focused, family-focused work experiences that you've accrued since then, you can include in this application as well. Please be aware that you also need to include your recertification fee when you're submitting these materials. As we've mentioned earlier, please be sure to make sure you're checking the NCFR webpage for the most up-to-date information on that. The next thing that we're going to talk about is what to do if your certification has lapsed. So, certifications can lapse due to a couple different reasons. They can lapse if you have non-payment of your annual fee. They can lapse if you fail to submit your continuing education activities. And they can also lapse if you fail to show sufficient work experience. This is especially so when you're upgrading to that full certification. Lapse certifications can be reinstated by paying back any fees that were necessary, so that, like that annual fee that we talked about, or by providing the supporting documentation that would have been due. So being able to show that you do have these continuing education activities or showing that work experience.
One of the questions that gets asked repeatedly by students is, what is it that FLEs do? What are the types of jobs that we as students would eventually hold? Well, there are a couple of things we can do to explain the CFLE credential to employers. The first is to look up the webpage, which does just that, on ncfr.org. But I thought we might walk through not only how we explain our field, but also some examples of jobs that individuals hold who have the CFLE designation. The field of family science actually has their own website, family.science. The purpose of the website is to help to explain what it is that we as family scientists do. Now, one aspect of family science is family life education. Family life education is typically preventative in nature. Instead of working with families after a problem has occurred as interventionists, we like to work with families before there's a problem in the hopes that an ounce of prevention is in fact worth a pound of cure. In doing this, we're using a family systems approach to help families who may not even know that they could be better off than they are now. We work with families' strengths, not their weaknesses, in order to build up protective factors which may head off problems later on. We're also looking at the family in terms of the larger system, not just how the family functions as a unit, but how does the family function as a unit within society, and what are the pressures that society is placing on that family. To bring that full circle, these are the ways that you can talk with employers about what is family life education. You are working, at least in part, to prevent future problems in families, to strengthen them based on the strengths that are already present, and to provide education so that things that maybe aren't as strong get stronger.
So now that we've talked a little bit about how new professionals can explain what family life education is to employers, we thought that it'd be a good idea to discuss some of the areas that family life educators are actually working. So academics and practitioners are actually working in a lot of different areas. So a lot of people are working in healthcare. A lot of people do community education initiatives, so like we talked about earlier with building curriculum and really focusing on that preventative education. A lot of people work in social service agencies. We see a lot of CFLEs in faith communities. And of course, from an academic perspective, a lot of academics are working in colleges and universities, training students to be future CFLEs. The military is also a place that a lot of CFLEs work in. So for this, a lot of them are doing deployment preparation with families or family reintegration programs. We also see CFLEs working in government agencies. So for example, the Department of Health and Human Services is really the natural home for those who work with families. But a lot of other government agencies work with families too, and CFLEs can work in those areas also. CFLEs also work in retirement communities, so working with our aging population. As you can see from these examples, academics and practitioners are working in many different areas. What's really great about this is this gives CFLEs a lot of options for where they want to take their career. But that also gives them the power to decide where it is that they want to go. So because there's so many different options, it's really exciting that CFLEs get the opportunity to identify exactly what it is that they want to be working in. To become more knowledgeable on the field of family science and to hear more information about what you can do with your CFLE credential, a great thing to do would be to get involved with your local affiliate. Scott and I are both involved with the Ohio Council on Family Relations, who is our local affiliate. For more information on who your local affiliate is, please refer to the NCFR webpage.
To close today, we'd like to thank NCFR, OHCFR, and everyone who is watching because you're the ones who are going to be helping to grow the field of family science. We hope to see you as a CFLE in the near future, and good luck.